for being here. This is my friend Jennifer. So Jennifer, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
So my name is Jennifer Davis Papa. I am currently Managing Director and Vice President at Patrick Capital Management. What my role is I currently partner with corporations, financial institutions, and financial advisors to provide them with investment vehicles for their clients. So the investment vehicles, I'll break this all down. Pretty much what I do is provide custom investment solutions so people can invest their money. And they can invest their money in all sorts of different kinds of ways, whether it be mutual funds, stocks, bonds, venture capital, everything from soup to nuts. So if you think about the investment world in Wall Street, I pretty much know.
Awesome. So for me, I'm a chemical engineer. I work currently for BASF. In the past, I used to work with funds, and I've also worked for a few other companies, HP, Microsoft, Cargill, PepsiCo. I'm kind of like the Fortune 100 company, if you will. Because I go down the list, I pretty much work for Fortune 100 companies all my life, so I have some background experience there. So the first question that I have for you is, actually, why don't we turn it to the audience? I feel like we'll be kind of asking questions of ourselves. Do you guys have anything that specifically that you want to talk about when it comes to negotiating the salary or making bold career moves as a mother or as a woman?
Absolutely. So I've been doing what I'm doing. I've been in the corporate world, male-dominated, fighting my way to the top for 20 plus years now. So how do you make sure that that is something that you're getting what you're getting? My first thing, what I've always done, is I've never been apologetic for who I am as a person. So I never go into a meeting and I never stutter when it comes to talking about money. Because if you think about our male counterparts, they never stutter. They're in your face, pay me what I deserve, blah, 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 blah. So, how do you go ahead and do that? Ask the question. My biggest piece of advice for you is to go up to any other person who you know is in a similar field or is even working for the same company and ask them if you can have a conversation. How long have you been here? What is your salary range? How long did it take you to get to the salary that you're at? Because at the end of the day, we said it before, we don't talk about this enough. And everybody in here is valuable, and we shouldn't be afraid to ask those questions. Because the more informed you are when you go in to negotiate that salary, the more likely they're going to give you what you deserve and what you want. Their goal in life is to lowball you. 100%.
That is so I've always, every 2 years I make a career move, and every 2 years I get either a promotion. That's pretty much the time that I set for myself. Is I get bored once I'm 2 years into a role, so I just automatically in my head think, okay, 2 years is up, it's time for a new job, a new promotion, or something totally different. And so when I walk into a system, like she said, I ask some questions, I let my boss know ahead of time. So don't wait until the last minute. So if you want that promotion, you need to be talking about it a year in advance. So I think a lot of people wait until they really need that money or they really need to make that next move. I say you need to plan 1 year in advance. So which means for me that means after year one, right? So year one I've proven myself. I've kind of busted my behind off. And so I take those results and I tell people document everything, girls. Document. What have we done? Even if it's moving this chair to there, because I would have paid somebody to move this chair from here to there. So how much does that cost? And add it up. So every single month, I total how much bottom line am I making in the company. And it doesn't mean money coming in that I'm seeing. It's what is it worth? And so that by the end of the year, you have all this list of accomplishments that you have somehow, added dollar amounts to. And so you can say, by doing X, Y, and Z, I have saved the company $3 million because if the company had to go hire a PR person, for example, or they have to hire somebody doing social media to do X, Y, and Z, that is money that they will pay to that person. So you have gone above and beyond to do X, Y, and Z for the company, and as a result, you deserve X, Y, and Z. So I say just plan ahead, ask questions, and if it's a job that you want or somebody else has, go there and say, you know what? What's the salary range? Because here people don't want to tell you what they make. So it's more like, oh, are you a level? So in my company, it's level, are you a 4-1 or a 5? So is this job a 5-1? Because in my head, I already know the calculation, like I know what those levels are in terms of dollars. And so just make that kind of reverse engineer everything is what I do.
If you're not quite yet at the point where you want to talk to somebody in your firm, there are a lot of online resources that you can go to. You can go to Glassdoor, you can go to Indeed, you can go on LinkedIn, and you can type in the title for your position and where your position is located geographically, and it will put all sorts of branches in there. So you at least have that starting point when you're walking in, understanding that in the greater Detroit area, if I'm a vice president of business development, my salary minimum that I should go in and ask is 125, for example. Because I know that other vice presidents in a specific area of business development are earning that in a geographical area as well. So be your best advocate.
Go prepared, like she said. That was one thing I did because we moved from Houston to Detroit. So when we were coming, obviously what they paid in Houston is different from what they paid here. So that was exactly what you said. Like I went to Salaries.com, I typed everything in, supply chain, X, Y, and Z, what does that mean, how much do they pay? And so when it came to negotiating, that was kind of like my base. And I tell people just double your base and say, oh, this, and they'll come back, they'll lower it. And so that when they lower it, it comes down to 1.5x. And then you can still go like, oh no, that's not enough. And add more things, because we're moms, and I'm very unapologetic about asking for more, vacations. Most companies are pretty set, but I think just kind of plugging it in and saying, I really love to be flexible. I'm very results driven. I don't need to be clocking in and clocking out. Is that something that your company accommodates? That was something that I negotiated right before I even started. I told my boss, I was like, I have a kid and I can walk my behind off. I said, I can walk my butt off, but this is what's going to happen. I'm not going to be clocking in and clocking out like everybody else. Is that okay with you? So those are the kind of simple negotiations that you can do. It's not on paper. Nobody's signing anything, but at least people are aware that you're not going to be in there 7 to 8. But they know that even if you're not there, you're working for the company, you're championing their cause. All right, we can take more questions.
So I'm in a new position. I've recently changed jobs, and one of the things, it's not the money aspect, it's like the time. So I'm pregnant. When I come back, I don't want to be there 5 days a week. I know I can get my job done in 4. I've done it before. How do you set up those conversations in a way that you're comfortable enough, that you're not apologetic? Because I don't want to be like, well, I just came back from maternity leave, guys, it's a little tough. But it's like, no, I have now 2 kids, and I need a day to get my life in order.
Did everybody hear the question? Okay.
Yeah, so for me, I've done exactly that, where I work 4 days a week. I think that you need to first of all prove yourself. So you prove yourself in 5 days a week. You basically, the next Friday. So what I do is basically put everything together. What do you normally do from that Monday through Friday? Put that in a scope of 4 days. And so these are the things that I need to physically be here for. And I am going to make myself available for that Monday through Thursday, busting my behind off. If you are planning to work from Friday, let them know that Friday I'm going to be doing those non-value added tasks that doesn't require me going to meet Jessica for a meeting or meet, Mark for, what's going to happen next week. So really just have a clear path. The last thing you want to do is go into that conversation with zero plan. So you need to, even when I'm interviewing for a job, I go with my 90-day plan. This is what I'm going to accomplish in the next 90 days. So I think it's exactly the same thing. Think about it as a job interview. You're basically renegotiating the terms of the job. So you need to go in with a plan and say, oh, this is my plan for the next, X, Y, and Z months that I plan to work from home on Fridays. I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z Monday through Thursday. On Friday, I'll use that to sift through my emails, respond to clients, do X, Y, and Z. And by Monday, I'll be starting on a clean slate. So maybe try that and see what happens.
Oh, I agree 100%. And the thing is we're moms. We get shit done. That's what we do. And to be able to go in there and have that plan, you're still making that job a priority, but guess what? My family's a priority too. And if you want to keep me as an employee because of my promotion, I can be this productive for you, kick ass, kick names in these 4 days, but I'm going to claim my time back on that.
and let them see you do it.
Yeah.
You know, like, so for example, I'm the person where there's no, like, you know, there's really no, everything is blurred. You know, like, I go home and I make dinner, and I'm on my laptop, responding to my director or my, you know, coworkers. So they get those emails, so they know that when Blessing comes and tells you she's working from home on Friday, oh, she deserves it. You know, like, I told my boss, I was pregnant, I was 9 months pregnant. And they called me in and they said, you know, we really need this report. You've been working on it for 3 months, we know, but we need it by tomorrow. And I was 9 months pregnant. It was snowing. And I was in my office working like what? I didn't leave until 2 a.m. You know what I mean? So the next day, I said, you know what? I am not coming in next week. I'm going to get some sleep, work from home next week, let me know if you need anything. And he was like, are you kidding? Go for it. You've been working nonstop for 3 months. You deserve it. So I think really showing people what's possible before you go ask. Because the last thing you want to do is slack off and then go in and say, oh, you know, I really want to work from home. You'll be like, oh yeah, you've been slacking off. So guys, the truth is it's hard work. You know, I mean, a lot of people try to sugarcoat, why are you not flexible? Show them what you can do and then go in with a plan. And then you'll be able to say, absolutely, we support you.
And even maybe propose it to them for a specific period of time. And at the end of that period of time, you can reevaluate to see if it was effective.
Any questions?
How did you address, this is very confident, how did you get to the place in your career as far as the confidence goes? Was it from experiences, or did you go through the struggles to get where you are right now?
That's a great question. And the answer to all of that is yes. So, I'll go way back into my background for everybody here. So, my father is retired chief of police. My mom did not work. I have an older brother, very traditional Sicilian family. So, grew up here in Detroit. So, I grew up in my household with my mom having an obvious favorite, which is my brother. So, what that ended up happening in my household was my dad said, oh, heck no, I have this amazing daughter, and he took me under his wing. I used to want to be a police officer just like my daddy, and my daddy said, you will never be a police officer, Jennifer. I never wanted this life for you. I want you to achieve so much more. So what ended up happening, kind of fast forward in several moves, it happened after I graduated high school. My parents made a decision to leave. And when I mean leave, is I was in Grand Rapids and they moved back to Detroit. So born and raised in Detroit, and I was left on my own. I was bitter. I was abandoned. I was 18 years old. I was on my own. I was going to school and I was working full time. What that taught me is that I have nobody else to rely on but myself. What I also realized at that time is that I needed people in my life to be who the person that I was. And I thought at that time, if I look at what I want to do with my life, people really care about two things. They care about their health and they care about their finances. And they are intricately involved with each other. Financially healthy, physically healthy. There's a lot of psychoanalysis that has gone into that. But I also figured out blood, guts, medical wasn't for me. And because I was left all alone by myself to go to college and work, I said I am pouring everything into making sure that this does not happen to other women like me. So I started my career. I was a teller at American Bank when I first started, and I busted my butt. I worked hard. I went to school full time. I have found I had an amazing opportunity to cross the bridge over into the investing world because I worked so hard and I needed the money because I was living on my own at the same time too and going to school. And I knew that I could make more money if I sold more products for the bank because there was commission and there was bonuses involved. I had the opportunity then to cross over and to do kind of a hybrid role where I started working on investments plus business banking. I also found that I could make a lot more money on the investment side of it than I could just on the banking side of it. But the difference on that money part was, now that I crossed over onto that investment side of it, I could have a bigger impact every single day in what I did in people's lives. I wasn't always this confident. It took me a long time. It took me to where I had a really horrible boss in my career, a gentleman that was did not like women to be successful, thought that women were he was threatened by a very strong and smart woman to a point where I was in a breakfast meeting with him. He was yelling at me in public at this breakfast meeting, calling me a liar about being successful in sales. How can I do what I'm doing? I'm making him look bad. And I looked him in the face and I slammed my fist on the table and I said, your shit stops now. I just maxed out. I had maxed out my entire life. And he just looked at me and his jaw dropped open. And I said, I'm done with this. And I am done with you. And I got up and I walked away. And it was that turning point in my life that I said to myself, I will never allow anybody to treat me that way again in business. And from there, me having that confidence from that very moment and being in that meeting and having him belittle me, I laugh about it now. It's so funny now. It wasn't funny then. It wasn't funny then. I mean, we were at the Pancake House in Grosse Pointe. Like, if anybody wants to know where we were, this place was busy. Like, there was packed. It was opening day for the Tigers. Like, people were ready to party, and there was a packed restaurant. And it was at that moment that I called somebody else in the same company that I was with, and like, I think I just got fired today. And yeah, okay, and I was okay with it. He wasn't okay with it though. So it was through that very moment in time that I said I will never let somebody else define me and my confidence in my career.
I think for me, I've always been confident because I'm the first of 5 or 6. I don't know how many siblings I have. I've lost count. My parents keep having kids. But I mean, I've always been confident, but I think that my confidence grew as soon as I became a mom. Because I became a mom very young. I was 22, and I immediately said, you know what? I really need to hustle. I need to really, create this life that I want for my kids. And plus, I had a girl, and I've always told myself that, if I do have a girl, I want her to know that she can be anything she wants to be in this world. I think it's because I grew up in a third world country, and, women were not, even though I come from a country where our women are celebrated, there's still parts of that world that really, puts men in a pedestal. And if you're a son, I think my dad had a friend that said, oh, why did you send blessing to America? You had a son that you could have sent, because to him, it felt like, my brother would have been more successful than I was. And so for me, I've always just wanted to prove people wrong. And I think that really has really helped me. It's lit up, my behind, and I just go for it. And then unfortunately, I ended up being an engineer, and I'm always the woman in the room. So that has been helpful. You kind of tend to develop, some really, strong backbone. Working with Moroccan men, like, we don't talk to women. Like, wow, I am the consultant, and I'm the only one that can turn this around. So, where is your interpreter? Because we're gonna get started. So it's speaking French. So I've been in those kind of situations where I was just forced to develop that. So, are there any questions? Yeah.
I think this is probably more for you, based on that custodial background. How do you navigate the workplace? How do you navigate the workplace when you do work for a bully? And you can't walk away like that same day.
It took me years. It took me 4 years to confront him. It took me a lot of tears. I would cry. I would drink a lot. I would go home and I would drink. It was bad. He was the type of individual, he wasn't just a bully to me. He would call the women his girls. Oh, it makes my skin crawl to even say that out loud. But anybody that worked in the office, they were his girls. And so what I ended up doing I went over his head. And I know this may not be the most appropriate answer, but in that very specific situation, I called the person who originally hired me into this firm. I love this gentleman to death. He's my mentor today, and I talk to him every single week. I called him, and we went directly to his boss. It ended up being a situation where HR did get involved. We came in there. I did not lose my job. I wasn't the only person. I was the only person that stood up to him. So when I finally got to that point where that conversation happened very publicly in that restaurant, and we had gotten corporate involved, all the women in the office felt empowered, right? were able to have what we an HR came in. And I very quickly at that time, I didn't want anything to do with it. I stopped going into the office. You know, at the end of the day, I didn't even take care of myself. It was still very much an old boys type of network. He kept his job. I don't know what ended up happening. All I know is that I changed companies. But at the same time, I ruffled enough feathers there where they immediately changed policies. He's still working there though. But again, I went above his head. At that point, I felt that I didn't have any other choice. But at the same time, any type of interaction I did have with him, I did not take crap from him at all anymore. The next meeting that everybody in that office was, and he's like, my girls, I'm like, I'm not your girl. Directly in his face. It got to the point that it was confrontational, and I made the decision for myself that I did not want to be in that environment anymore, and I removed myself. I was also very fortunate though, in that role, especially being in sales and being in investment sales, I didn't have to be in the office if I didn't want to. I could work anywhere, I could work from my home, I could do anything like that, so I benefited from the fact that I didn't have to see his face every single day. If I did have to see his face every single day, I'd probably be in jail. I might have been.
Seriously. Do you have any other questions?
I don't know if that answered your question or not, but again too, because I was the first person to stand up, men came behind me.
And definitely standing up for yourself, no matter what, is, for me, I've been in some situations, and for me, it's just be true to yourself. So no matter what, just, you need to maintain your own professionalism. I'm very big on reputation. Your reputation is your currency. And so I'm very big on just documenting everything so that, you know, I'm always like worst case scenario. Like if we get called to speak, I have my documented, you know, I've had people call me X, Y, and Z, and like, just to reiterate, you did say that. Like, oh yes, I did, and now everybody here, very good. You know, and I just leave it at that. So I think just kind of document things, be very professional in your dealings, and then if something happens as a result, at least you know that you be true to yourself. You know what I mean? And you can walk through that situation.
That was really when HR really was the nail in the coffin with them on changing policies, because I documented everything. I had emails, I had voicemails, I had so much already on hand to prove. And strangely enough, other women in the office were doing the same thing, but they didn't really do it. Nobody was speaking up. So
Office politics can be something.
yeah, it's brutal.
Any questions? All right, guys, I know you have a lot on your mind. Okay.
I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned maybe changing jobs or asking for promotions every
Correct.
couple of years. And you mentioned, maybe shifting from banking into investing. Can you talk a little bit about not completely changing your career, but finding different opportunities?
Different opportunities.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I love
Did you
that.
seek it out or did it
Oh my gosh, I have so many amazing statistics
I'm
about
so
that.
excited. So this is a passion of mine because I'm all about diversifying your portfolio. I'm a chemical engineer and I have done anything but chemical engineering. I did start out, I started out learning the trade, I did all the internships. I was the internship queen. By the time I was done with college, I had to work for 5 different companies. And that's because I got the money. But I worked for 5 different companies, and so when I took on my job, my very first job out of college, it wasn't even a chemical engineering role. It was a capital project manager. So I was managing projects, which is, chemical engineers would typically be, running the plant, and I was basically managing the project for all of the plants. And I really wanted that chemical engineering background, so I wanted to at least put in the work. So right after that, I went into more process and operation kind of thing. And immediately I was like, you know what, this is not a good idea. And so I started thinking about my next steps. So from there, I started talking to people, what can I do, what can I do? And seeking out, so I tell people, don't just go from A to Z, right? So you need to map things out. So I was like, oh, I am in operations. I know I want to land in business, but what is in between, right? So you need to move in dots. So I decided I wanted to do project management, so I did project management, and then I wanted to do consulting because I wanted to position myself as an expert instead of anything. So I started seeking out, some consulting work, and I was like, oh yeah, we want some operations experience, some technical experience in consulting. But what that gave me was the ability to still be a chemical engineer, right, a technical person, but also a business consultant. Because you're not only helping people map out their technical, steps, but you're also kind of selling the product, finding new clients, speaking to customers. So that was really helpful. And then I decided I wanted to do supply chain. So now I'm in supply chain, and my next step is business. So it's kind of looking at what's next, not necessarily looking at the end goal, right? So make strategic moves, but make them in incremental steps.
I love that you said that because that is very similar to what my career did. So there's a statistic out there that says women in corporate America, unless you hit more than 60% of a job description, you don't apply to question about it. And to me, that's alarming. Why? Because just because you don't hit 60% of the job requirements, they don't even know what those job requirements are listed on the application. If it sounds interesting to you, or if it's a next step, go for it. The worst you can do is talk to somebody and maybe it's not a good fit. But don't limit yourself just because you only qualify for 60% or more of the qualifications.
I have never been qualified for any job. I'm in supply chain for 2 years, and I still don't have a supply chain degree. I have not done the APICS or whatever they call it, and I am teaching people about supply chain, believe it or not. It's like you just have to position yourself as an expert, no matter what you do. That's one thing I learned. Are any of your Instagram social media, have you seen those people that automatically, as soon as they open an account, they are a social media expert?
Right.
No, seriously. It's like a lot of men. You're like, I'm now a social media expert. So position yourself. If you want to go into a different role, start looking at different things you can do to position yourself as an expert.
It comes down to, we are all brilliant people in this room, and you can learn how to do any job, but it's your personality and your characteristics that you have that can't be taught. So that's what you need to bring. And even though you may not be able to do supply chain management, all your other skills and your ability to learn quickly because you are so brilliant will make you a master at that job.
Just to give you a very brief history on that. So when I actually applied for the supply chain job, the guy told me, he said, my manager, he said, the person I'm looking for this role, we want somebody with a supply chain background and X, Y, and Z. So I kind of went in like, why are you interviewing me, But when I go to that interview, this was one thing I told them. And I said, how many people have you hired for this role that had a supply chain degree? They're like, oh yeah, everybody that's taken this role has had a supply chain, background. And I said, what has been your experience? What challenges have they faced? They were like, oh, well, they didn't really know the business because they didn't have a technical background. I'm like, hello. I have a technical background. I'm willing to work my behind off. I have been successful in every single job that I've taken. I have a proven track record. I mean, how hard is supply chain? And the guy was like, you are hired. You really need to position yourself as a problem solver. Because that's really what it's about. You know how to solve problems. Moms, you have things like lined up. You're running like an assembly line. Kids, pick up your lunchbox, do this, do that. You are smart. So just position yourself as a problem solver. Whenever you're going for that next job, next promotion. Say, I have done X, Y, and Z. These are my track record. And I think I can be very successful in this role if you give me a chance.
I can tell you exactly as I recruit people to come into asset management and investing, because there just frankly aren't enough women. If you look at, we man hundreds of statistics. Like women now manage over 55% of the wealth across the U.S. It's only going to be increasing. Women have different financial goals, so on and so forth. So you need more women to help women who are now going to control more money. So how do I recruit? I don't need you to know how to sell a mutual fund. I can teach you how to sell a mutual fund. But what I can't teach you is your basic characteristics and how to build a relationship. Your ability to problem solve and have a conversation with a person that is holistic and meaningful and deep, those are the women that I look for. The rest is easy.
Well, you time for one more question?
Yeah, I think you've done a great job, and we have a couple more minutes left, so I would love to hear from you both on what is your work mantra. What do you get up, which can be different from your motherhood mantra or your lifestyle mantra, but what is your work mantra? What would you depart your wisdom as we wrap this up this session?
Absolutely. Do you want to take that?
I'm going to finish with where I started. I am unapologetically myself. I have removed the words "I'm sorry" out of my business repertoire because you know what? I'm not sorry. And as women, we feel the need to apologize for a lot. You bump into me, I'm sorry. No, excuse me. So when I look at how I approach business and what is my mantra, I'm apologetically me. You're gonna like me or you're gonna hate me, and that's okay. But you know what? If we decide to work together, our relationship is gonna kick ass.
I love it. I love it. For me, it's do it for you. You know, I don't compare myself to anybody else. I don't go look at somebody else's career progression. Oh, that person is making more money, and this person is fit and sexy and handsome. I don't have time for that. What is true to me? What is true for me? What do I believe in? What is it that makes me happy? And those are the things that I go for. So if it's the next job, if I feel like strategically it fits into my family, my relationship, my work, things that I've envisioned for myself, those are the things that I gravitate towards. I take jobs based on the season of the life that I'm in, based on the season of motherhood that I'm in. If I really want to spend the next 2 years focusing on my family, then I take a job that I know that I'm really, I can really do without, really spending more time. A job that I can coast, kind of just do it. And if it's a season where I want to kick butt, I want to make, 10x what I made, 5 years ago, then I level up that way. I seek those kind of challenging roles. So for me, it's just do it for you. Do it honestly. Do it honestly. Do it for you, because you can't recreate somebody else's path for yourself. It has to be your path. It has to be what comes from your heart. I think that's it. Thank you so much.